Actually, one quick second.
Yeah, that's more professional than any of my streams. We've never had a countdown. I yeah. Yeah, so I think you can pay like 15 bucks a month to stream Zoom meetings, but I think also a free way is in OBS. Pretty sure that you can just choose like computer audio like as an audio input. So it'll just like put in like whatever audio is coming out of the computer. So like my voice or like if you're listening to music. Wait, people can hear us right now? Okay, okay. Yeah. Mhm. Oh, that would be so tedious. I'll have to go back and see. They said they could only hear
mic won't turn on. All right, there we go. Mic's on. Desktop audio. You want to start talking? Let's hear it. Let's see if people can hear you properly.
Hello. I
All
hope
right.
you can hear me.
How's-
They could hear me before at least, so.
Yeah, right. How's that audio, guys, for Ava's? How's Ava's audio? Hopefully it's well. I want to make sure we get this right this time, because before can't hear. Well, can you hear her now though, John? Keep talking.
Oh, someone asked if these are the youngest economic PokeTubers doing a collab.
Probably.
I don't know. How old are you?
If you were to guess, how old do you think I am?
I don't know. I was watching that stream with Squeaks in it, and like, I literally would never have been able to guess his age because he's like over 30, I think.
Yeah, I would have guessed that.
I thought like he could be like 18.
Really?
Or like 21.
I thought it was early 30s.
Because it's like degraded quality video.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, on the bright side, you look good on our end here, so which is really nice because last couple of guests we had a couple of issues. All right, perfect audio. That's what we like to hear. Finally, I'm 23 though.
I was gonna guess 25.
Oh, close.
I'm 21.
You're 21? Damn.
Yeah. I'm a fetus.
That throws me off. I thought you'd be older. You're 21. Did you?
Yeah.
Well, I should. All right, I should start actually asking the questions now. All right, everyone can hear. We're live. We're good. Awesome. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you guys all so much. So today we're gonna be doing an interview with Ava's Binder. So I want to give a shout out to her. Thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciative of it. Of course, for those people who don't know who she is, you can go check out her channel. But she does basically everything I do in regards to Pokemon and trying to assimilate it in an economic stance. So it's kind of funny. I remember when people were recommending you, I looked at one of your videos and I saw you had a whiteboard in the background and I was like, yo, that is so cool. I was like, I need a whiteboard now because I need to start putting everything out when it comes to doing my charting. So but yeah, if you want to kind of give a little bit of a intro to who you are and kind of what you're all about.
Yeah, of course. Also, the whiteboard is a new addition. It's clearly those Patreon funds helping make high quality content.
Damn.
But yeah, my name is Ava. It is incredibly weirdly pronounced for the spelling. I'm aware. It's okay. I'm not offended. And I've been making videos on YouTube for like a little while now, but I didn't start making like more like analytical videos about Pokemon until recently because honestly, I didn't think anyone would want to watch. But I had like made some like excessively detailed spreadsheet for Sun and Moon, and I decided I might as well make a video about it, even though I didn't think anyone would want to watch, and apparently they did. So then I just kind of like kept rolling with it because these are like my favorite videos to make. I think they are so fun. And, you know, I don't know, I've always been into Pokemon, I guess, because I feel like a lot of people talk about that. I've been collecting, you know, since I was a kid. You know, pretty consistently throughout, but like obviously like off and on a little bit, but I never like had like a really long period where I was out of the hobby and then like came back into it. So I've kind of been around for a while, and I also like Yu-Gi-Oh as well. So there are a few videos about that on my channel, but you don't have to go watch them. They're very bad. And so yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. I just make videos talking about you know, the Pokemon market and trying to apply some more like investing principles as a whole to it, because my background is in value investing. So I always try to come at this stuff like from that perspective, even though you could argue that Pokemon cards have no like intrinsic value, but there's an interesting framework, you know, that you can use to look at that stuff.
Yeah. So you said that's your background. Can you give a little bit of like, can you just talk about a little bit on your experience of that, like what you kind of had as your further education, whether it be also what age you were when you started collecting and what kind of really inspired you to want to do this kind of stuff?
Yeah. So when I like, it's hard to say when I first seriously started collecting, but I guess if we mark it by like the first time I bought something to keep sealed, I would have been like 15 or 16. So like sophomore year of high school, I guess. And then it just kind of like snowballed from there, especially starting in like 2019, because I just was like, I had a bit more disposable income. So I started buying more stuff, obviously, as you do. And my background, I'm an economics major and East Asian languages technically, but that's like not relevant. And so, you know, obviously I have that in the background always that I'm thinking about. And then as well, I like have been working in investing for about like 15 months as an intern with a group that focuses on value investing. So basically, like we try and pick stocks that we think are undervalued by the market, and we make a portfolio for our clients, and that's what we do basically. And I'm actually going to start a different job this summer, but in a similar vein. So that's just kind of the path that I'm on. And so I guess that's the background that I have in investing. So like the way I look at things is very heavily slanted because of that stuff. Hopefully not in a super bad way though, because it means that I do prefer to like look at the, analytics and fundamentals of things. So hopefully it's not too bad of a thing.
No, for sure. Are you still currently in school, or have you already completely finished?
I'm still in school, and if you can hear the people behind me, I'm actually an RA, so I have to live in the dorms, unfortunately.
Oh no.
But I get paid for it, so it's usually worth it.
That's
I'll
nice
go
of
on
you.
mute though when I'm not talking, so other people don't have to hear that.
That's good at least. Where are you going to school for? Or where are you going to school, sorry?
I go to school in Chicago. I don't know if I should like say the university technically because like, will I get doxxed? I don't know.
Yeah, right. That's probably we could probably say we could probably just leave it at that. That's cool. I mean, there's definitely a bunch of financial institutions that I know of in regards to just general trade. I mean, you've got the Chicago Exchange, you got the Chicago Board of Exchange over there, so you've got quite a bit of big brains over there in Chicago. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So as far as it goes, obviously, like you're saying, you're going to school right now. You're looking at, as far as it goes, doing some value investing. You're going to transition into having another job later in the summer. Is this something where you're more or less going to focus on in your own personal career, value investing in stocks, or is it something that, because obviously you're doing a YouTube channel specifically geared towards Pokemon, could you eventually see yourself doing something where you personally just whether create your own company or whether be a part of a company and do value investing with Pokemon? Like, do you eventually intend to incorporate that in the near future, or is this something that you're kind of just doing for fun and stocks are your main deal?
That's a really, really good question. I feel like there's a lot to say about that. So value investing, I guess, is kind of like if I could have any job in finance, it would be value investing. At least as of right now, I don't have experience in everything, but it just kind of aligns with my personal values, which are just that like it really how should I put this? Like I don't want to ever regret making a choice because I was paying a ridiculous price for something like that. You don't know what will happen, but you can know that, you're making a rational decision with like a sound thesis and like you've got a margin of safety. Even if it doesn't work out, that's okay for me. And I just like that we're able to do that for people and hopefully, find things for them that are actually like undervalued. And it takes a lot of work, but it's also pretty fun. And that's why I've made so many spreadsheets in my day. And so if I were to keep going in investing, I would probably keep with that. Obviously, it would be great to start my own thing. I'm not that much of a team player, if I'm being honest. Sometimes I like to just do my own thing in a corner, and then we can go back and meet up when we're done. But hopefully I don't really want to be working for someone else my whole life. So like, I don't know if you know like FIRE, financial independence.
Yeah. No, I'm very familiar with them.
Yeah, that's a big goal of mine. And in that case, like, once you have that, you can basically do whatever you want. And like, if we're talking about Pokemon, I mean, that would be really cool. But of course, that just doesn't depend on like whether I want to or not. It's like whether or not I actually could do that. And I guess only time will tell. But like, if I could do that, that would be very cool. I don't know if I'd want it as like my main source of income for just me personally. I like to, make sure I have like a diverse thing happening. But of course, like if I have a decent amount of savings, it's less of a concern. So I guess that is my answer to that complicated question.
Well, right on. Yeah, it's definitely a big one for sure. So, because I mean, just to give a little input on my life, I also was going the same exact route you were, but decided that, hey, I could easily just start my own business with Pokemon. I don't, need to finish and get myself a 4-year for econ. I decided just to leave it at 2 and didn't want to I'm located out of Oregon, so I was going to go to Oregon State. And so I just fell in love with Pokemon, and the concept, like you were saying, of working for someone else, it's just not kind of something I've always been a big fan of. So starting your own business and doing it with something you love, I think that's definitely cool. And I can definitely tell you have a huge passion like I do in regards to general economics. So
Yeah, well, that's very impressive, by the way. Like, really respect that. Were you getting an economics degree as well?
that was, yeah. So
Okay.
yeah, just a general business transfer, and then I was going into economics. So I was going to a community college because it's way cheaper to do that
Yeah.
route. Just do 2 years at a community college and then transfer to state. So yeah, just general business transfer, and then I was going into economics.
Yeah, also for anyone who doesn't know, economics degrees are pretty useless. In terms of like actual finance, like practical skills, like you learn some great abstract things, but not every university offers like an actual finance major. So the economics one is a great choice, if you're trying to get a job. But
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, one of the reasons why I wanted to go that route is because, well, a couple of reasons why. Because there's actually this individual, I don't know how much you follow cryptos, but there's this guy named Crown, and he actually went to Oregon State, and then he eventually transferred to go work as a market maker over in Chicago. And so that was kind of the career path that he took. And so I'm a huge fan of him. And for a while, I actually wanted to go the exact same route that you went, but I wanted to do it more eventually with cryptocurrencies because that's something I'm very passionate about. I mean, I've been into stocks for a while, but yeah, no, I just decided, I guess Pokemon was kind of it once it hit the pandemic. But enough about me, though. I want to get back into transitioning, asking some more questions about you. So back on the topic of Pokemon, however, obviously you said that you're going to be coming out with a video shortly where you discuss vintage versus modern. Do you want to give a little bit of input on what you're kind of, I don't know if expertise is the right word, but what are you kind of focusing in on in regards to long-term investment? Do you like more modern? Do you like more vintage? Do you like something in the middle? Or what's kind of like, and you've obviously talked about diversification portfolio. Do you have a little bit of each, but kind of just give us a little bit of that for yourself.
yeah, so we were talking about this like before the actual live started because I told him that my phone died and I had to re-record this particular video. But my opinion is really that like this is a really controversial topic. I know that like a lot of people are like really divided on this, but I personally think it just really depends on the product or card, first of all, like if we're talking sealed or singles, but like the specific item and also the individual, because I really think that you should like prioritize things that you like. You can also prioritize return, but I wouldn't buy something just because you think it will have return if you don't like it at all, because this is, of course, like very, very high risk. And if the value declines over time, it should be something that you would be happy to have for a long time at least, if not forever. So that's something that I think is pretty important, and that's kind of what the video is about. And kind of just encouraging everyone to like make their own decisions based off of like, if they want to watch videos like this, like more as information that they can use to help them make their own decisions rather than just like buying things that I'm buying or whatever. So that's what that video is. But then in terms of my own collection, when I have a mix of everything. If you can see behind me, I've got some vintage cards, I have some sealed product, etc. And I have some like vintage packs that aren't on display or things like that. But really lately I've been buying a lot more singles than I was in 2021 and 2020 because everything was so expensive as far as singles go. So prior to that though, I bought a decent amount of singles. I would buy a lot of lots on eBay, that type of thing. And I would like sometimes flip them. And so I sold a decent amount of singles in 2020 instead of buying them. But now I'm starting to buy more singles, particularly ones that I've been wanting, but like have not been willing to pay those ridiculous prices for. So now I can get them like significantly cheaper than I would have been able to. But in 2020 and 2021, I was almost exclusively buying sealed product at like reasonable prices though. So it was like a lot of like hunting around. I don't know if you guys know the Pokemon TCG deals subreddit. use that a lot. You know, the one post at like 3 a.m., I would be there and I'd be ready. So that's how I would get things pretty much always for MSRP or less. So that's kind of what I was focusing on then. And now I still buy sealed product, but I'm also starting to accumulate more singles and also starting to buy some more vintage sealed stuff. And the singles that I buy, I don't buy like I really go for quality over quantity, but I am going for an Entei Master set. So that is one of my
A master set from where?
for Entei.
Oh.
Favorite Pokemon, the best Pokemon. um, so I'm going for that, and then just like focusing on a few cards that I really want. There's a Crystal Lugia back there. That was like one of my dream cards, and I decided to just like wait instead of buying like a shitty copy, which was my original plan for like 500. I decided to just get the PSA 9 because you know it's a pretty rare card, so I think it'll hold its value. So most of the time, though, I don't buy singles like thinking about the return because they're just like so much more wild than Pokemon cards or than sealed product, my mistake. So I usually like when it comes to focusing on like the ROI, I usually go for sealed product that's close to MSRP so that I have a low cost basis because it's like much easier to have a higher percentage ROI. And that's also part of why a lot of times I'll aim for more modern stuff because you can get it for that like close to MSRP price or below or at MSRP. And like the less you pay, the easier it is to have a high percent ROI because obviously like the percentages are what really matter rather than like absolute dollar amounts.
So when you say getting it closer to MSRP, I assume you're referencing more along the lines of modern. Is that something you're more geared towards investing in for sealed product?
I before was basically exclusively I would buy certain things for just my personal collection, but they're like still pseudo modern. So like a Generations ETB, I paid like 600 bucks for one of those because I had to have it because I like to have like one of everything, like one of every ETB, and then just you know buying some Sun and Moon things that I was just like had holes in my collection, you know. So I was filling in those gaps, but now I've actually started to buy some more sealed vintage stuff. So I bought some jungle packs or no fossil packs recently, a first edition German base set pack, and I'm gonna get some of those graded because you can still get a really decent return on those things. The best place to buy them is Heritage. So that's part of why I've started buying a lot more sealed vintage because you can get really good deals on Heritage, and it's also like it's kind of addictive going on there. So it's dangerous. And I've bought some actual graded packs recently from there as well, which I normally would never buy. But like it was such a great price that it was basically what I would pay for the raw packs, so I couldn't really turn it up. And it was for Neo Genesis, which I do love. I think it's a great set. So mostly I focus on newer products, but occasionally, like for personal enjoyment and to spice it up, I will buy some more vintage sealed stuff.
Gotcha. So obviously, like you were saying earlier, you're a couple years younger than me. So kind of the era that I grew up in was the Diamond and Pearl EX era. Was that I keep hearing you say Neo Gen was something that you like? Are you just a big fan of that set, or was that a set that even when you know it was kind of that Diamond and Pearl Black White era, you were still collecting that kind of stuff? Or were you more focused on some of the older product? What was it specifically that you really enjoyed collecting when you were younger at that age?
I mean, I just liked whatever I could get, you know, like I didn't have any special resources. And a lot of the cards I got were just like through trading because like we couldn't spend like that much money on just like cardboard packs, you know. So Neo Genesis, like it's just a set I like. I like all of the Neo sets. I think they're really great. But then in terms of like what I actually like remember initially collecting was around Diamond and Pearl as well. So it was like a lot of like level X's, those types of things. I'm not like particularly attached to level X's and stuff though, because I don't love the
It's a
like the
problem.
CG art. I'm not a fan, but I love the legends, and particularly the Darkrai and Cresselia
That's
and the
my
Raikou
favorite
and
one.
Suicune. Those two are the best. I think those ones are the same artist. A lot of the other ones like are way less stylized, but those two are awesome. So I do have fond memories of those cards. And then I remember when Black and White came out, and it was very exciting. Like the first time I held a full art card, like and saw them, I thought that was so cool. Obviously, there were legends before, but like it wasn't the same, and these were like textured. So I just really enjoyed those.
Yeah, no. I mean, I'm basically the same. I mean, well, I would say I'm a little different in regards to level X's. I don't know how to explain it. Maybe it's just the little kid in me, but nostalgically, that was always my favorite. But yeah, no, Darkrai Cresselia is hands down my favorite. I'm gonna try and pick that up in a 10. I have a couple of them in 9s, but and then yeah, Black and White. I remember the first ever full art I pulled was actually a Lord N, full art. So I had that, and then I also pulled a Victini as well. So that was really cool. But I do have a ton of the Reshiram and Zekroms because I used to compete in tournaments and I had to have the full arts when I was competing in tournaments. Had to have them all.
I remember getting like when Black and White first came out, like those tins that they always do, and just like the Reshiram I got like in my first tin. I was so shook. I was like, "What is this?" Obviously, I wasn't like that into looking up Pokemon cards online because I was like 12 or whatever, however old I was. But that's just like such a fond memory, and I love those cards. And I feel like they're still some of the best full arts that have ever been printed in terms of like aesthetics.
Yeah, no, I mean they're absolutely gorgeous, and of course, I really wish I had more of them from when I was a kid. It's not that I was stupid. It was that I was so focused on competitive that every time I got cards that were like a full art or something and it wasn't competitively viable, I just sell it for packs. That's exactly what I did every time. And so like looking back at it, I'm like, if I had that card still, that'd be so nice right now.
At least trade them for singles that are competitive. I feel like that's a losing proposition. I have played the TCG in the past, but I was never good at it. But I do have fond memories of playing it at locals as well. So that was another part of it for me. I really enjoyed that. A lot of people never played the game, which I feel like you're missing out if you haven't played it. It's not the best game ever though. I will tell you that. Like Yu-Gi-Oh and Magic are better.
Yeah, from a like a straight pure, TCG perspective, the mechanics on it they're a little funky for sure. So, but so obviously you've talked about some of the things that you're currently picking up. I don't know how much you know about the channel and what we kind of specialize in, but ultra modern is kind of what our main focus is. Just because we believe it's the most affordable for people. Obviously, if you want to, you can go buy an older, vintage pack in the Diamond and Pearl era, Black and White era for around the same price of a booster box, which, of course, I've talked about it before. I do that myself. I don't think it's a bad investment by any means. But leading into the question of ultra modern, is there anything specifically in ultra modern that you like, whether it be investing in the next year, long term, short term? Like, what's your kind of general strategy? And if ultramodern is of course not something you're into, then you can always discuss something differently, or you're just staying for ultramodern or whatever your aspect of it is.
I mean, I've got 2 ultramodern products.
Yeah.
Clearly I don't
UPC real original there. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, to be fair, I didn't pay $350 for it, so.
Ooh,
I only have one, so this I would not pay current price personally. Like I made a video about it, and it's not like technically super overpriced, but for me, that's just like not it for me when it's so expensive after just coming out. But I had one that I got from a seller that I know, and I have to have it for the collection, so that's not getting sold. And then the one next to it as well is just for my personal collection. No, I definitely buy ultra modern, and I've talked about it on my channel. Fusion Strike is one that I have been talking about and harping at people about because it's only like $80 right now, maybe 85 depending where you're looking, and that is a very, very, very fair price for that. People hate on this and Chilling Reign and even Battle Styles, but they, in my opinion, are all actually good sets. It's just that they're like getting overshadowed. I feel like, you probably already know all of this and probably have talked to everyone about it, but that's just my take on it as well. And like, people are still paying, $180 for an Evolving Skies booster box. And just like when you imagine like the future of these products and the percentages, it just doesn't make sense that you would be paying more for one Evolving Skies than 2 Fusion Strike boxes, in my opinion. I think in the long run, an Evolving Skies box won't be twice as expensive as a Fusion Strike box. I could be wrong, but also there's a lot more downside on that, especially because there like is almost certainly going to be a reprint. So for me, like it's really like I was saying about like the low cost basis and like prioritizing like percentages rather than like getting caught up in the hype and like FOMO. So I would never pay $190 for like a set that just came out. I'd rather just not have it. You know, I can miss out, but I'm sure, you know, it'll get reprinted. And then things that I also just like, Pokemon Center ETBs, I feel like are a no-brainer right now. Part of the nice thing is like you can only get them from the Pokemon Center, so I do like that aspect of it. And what else is good? I like the Radiant Eevee collection that's coming out as well. That's available for pre-order on the Pokemon Center website, guys, if you want it for MSRP, so don't go overpaying for it. I don't know if it's still in stock, but it has an amazing playmat. So if you play TCGs or if you just want a playmat for your computer or mouse pad, I think that's a really cool product. But I don't know what you think. What are you picking up right now or recommending to people?
I mean, as far as what you're saying, just generally speaking, you kind of said, you literally repeated everything I basically say on this channel. Like,
I'm sorry.
I'm
not
never.
trying to plagiarize.
Yeah, no, yeah. I see you did your research. I really appreciate it that you were watching all my videos. But of course, you gotta have some original content there. Yeah. No. But
I've watched at least a few.
Okay.
Especially the live stream.
Yeah. But as far as ETBs for Pokemon Center, I never shut up about those. People already know how much I talk about it. One of the things I talk about with Fusion Strike is I say it was caught in between, and it was just wrong place at the wrong time, because when you have a set such as Celebrations and Evolving Skies right before, and then you have a set such as Brilliant Star right after, the sentiment that I was hearing from a lot of like my stream, or a lot of the people in my Discord, was I just got completely burnt out spending all my money on Celebrations, all my money on Evolving, and Fusion looks like a decent set, but with Brilliant Star already around the corner and you already see some of the subset cards that are going to be revealed in it, then people were like, I'm just going to save my money, pass on Fusion, and go for Brilliant. So I would say for that, it was caught in an unfortunate time. In regards to battle styles, one of the things I've always talked about with battle styles is since I work with distributors very closely, I understand all the print patterns and when reprints happen. Battle Styles is actually one of the only sets that's had 3 waves on top of a print. And so if you actually look at the history of the value of Battle Styles, on its first initial pre-order waves, it was going for around 150, and then after reprint 2, it went down to 120. Then reprint 3, it went all the way down to around the 90s, but then it came back up to 110, 115, and then it got reprinted again after its initial 3 waves. So I think the issue with Battle Styles that a lot of people don't consider is that the set was actually performing extremely strong for how heavily it was printed, and the reason why it was heavily printed is because of how competitively viable it is. And once again, that just caused the prices to go down. So I feel like people hate on it a little bit more than it should. And then Chilling Reign, I mean, you listen to a lot of the people, that just once again talk in the Discord about it. Chilling Reign it's just an all around solid middle of the road set. It's not going to be the Evolving Skies, but it still has a lot of great cards that are in it. And considering the price for all 3 of these things, it's definitely insane to me that a lot of people are sleeping on it. For sure. I would say the only thing that you didn't mention that I really won't shut up about is I'm a huge fan of the Arceus figure box, but
I'm also a fan of that.
Oh yeah, I saw you go like this. And I'm like, can you see me? Yeah, no, I'm a huge fan of the Arceus figure box. And especially because if you look at the last kind of figure set that came out, or figure item, it was during Rebel Clash, and it was the Galar Pals, and the Galar Pals has terrible packs other than it has a Cosmic Eclipse, but it has, I think, a Sword Shield base, 2 Rebel, and then it has a Cosmic, and it was selling for 25, and now it's going for upwards of 120, and it's actually one of the best performing Ultramodern items. And so you take that with Arceus, which is a really good figure. I think the promo's great. Obviously, it's not an original promo card, kind of, which like what we had with the Galars. This one's just a retaken promo from over in Japan with the Arceus card. But still, I think that'll be fine. And then on top of that, it also has better packs that are going to be involved in it this time around. It's not going to have that Rebel Clash. It's going to have Brilliant on top of the Cosmic. So it's almost like a better version of what was the Galar Pals, just a little bit of an art design. So I think it could easily outpace the overall returns that you saw with the Galar Pals one. But I don't know what your thoughts are on that one.
No, for sure. I mentioned that in a video recently about some products that I really like. I don't think people should like be paying the $40 price that I think it's going for pre-orders right now. I think you should just wait for it to come out, because I think this one you'll be able to find around pretty easily is my guess. So I would definitely like hold off till you can get it closer to MSRP or at MSRP. But I like figures, so I have some like behind me. So I definitely want it even just to crack open. And I hardly ever feel compelled to crack things open. So for me, when I feel that way, that's like always a good sign because, you know, I think there's like a lot of value there. There's the pack value as well and the promo. It is pulled from Japan, but it is still a really cool promo. And of course, the figure, I think they managed to pack a lot into that one product. And like the predecessor that you mentioned, you know, it also did very, very well. And they're both just really cool. And for Chilling Reign, I think it has a similar problem that you mentioned to Fusion Strike, which is just that it came out before Evolving Skies, and everyone was like, I'm just going to skip Chilling Reign. I remember so many people saying that they were just going to skip Chilling Reign, which is fine. And like, I actually like Chilling Reign. I've had much better luck with that than I have had with Evolving Skies, personally, which is anecdotal and probably not supported by statistics, but it's just my personal experience.
Yeah, I definitely understand that because I did a video where I ranked all of the Sword and Shield era sets in order, in my opinion. Got to put that out there because it's, you know, everyone's going to agree or disagree. But one of the sets that I had placed extremely high was Brilliant Star, and I put it at number 2. And I did that just purely based from like a rationality perspective, not from an emotional perspective, because if I'm being completely honest, as people know who are part of my Discord know, I've opened around 1,100 packs and I've pulled a grand total of 1 alternate art. And it was the Luminion. And so the odds that I've had with Brilliant Star have been probably the worst odds I've had for a set that I've ever opened. So my disdain for Brilliant Star is extremely high. So although of course the cards that are in it are great, I think subset's great because Cosmic Eclipse is one of my favorite sets of all time. So the fact that they brought that back, I'm like, I love it. Huge Gen 4 fan, so I love Arceus. But man, I'll tell you what, it's been a rough go around for sure. I still don't even think I've pulled a rainbow of either Arceus or Charizard. I've straight up pulled like 4 rainbow Whimsicotts, 4 rainbow Shamans, and like numerous amounts of just the non-rainbow version. I know for a fact I have pulled 1 Arceus V-Star and 1 Charizard normal V-Star, but I haven't pulled even the rainbow ones. So it's been a really rough go around for me on the set. Speaking of anecdotal points.
I would love to know what the actual statistical odds are of that happening. That's impressive, actually. Like, You've got something special there. I like Brilliant Stars as well. I haven't gotten anything good from it, but I haven't opened that many packs of it either. I don't know. I think it's pretty close to Evolving Skies. But I also think Evolving Skies has just gotten like so overhyped. There's like a cult around it at this point. So I just feel like, I'm a bit cautious about buying the thing that everybody loves most at the moment, because that means that love is like already priced in.
Yeah.
Whereas, if you buy something that's not currently super hot, you have the potential for it to become hot in the future. So you have the potential to see like maybe more outsized gains than you otherwise would. But if it's something that's already beloved, like that's already going to be accounted for, in the current price or whatnot. So that definitely kind of adds some risk and decreases the potential upside, in my opinion.
I mean, I would definitely agree with you on that. But I would also say that if you're calculating it properly, the payout for that can be exponential, especially if you're like understanding what Pokemon runs on, which is pure nostalgia. Because like we were talking about, obviously with Level X cards, Level X was one of the most underperforming, cards for the longest time when you looked at overall PSA value. I think at one point you're able to get some of the top cards for like, anywhere between 20 to 50 bucks, which is absolutely insane when you look at current prices. But when of course the new games that came out that were the remake versions of Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, and then on top of that they came out with an Arceus card, the nostalgia kind of popped it off. And so if you got in on those level X's, whether it be raw or whether it be graded, especially considering how low population they are, and now you're saying to yourself, look, I was buying them for 20, 30 bucks and now they're sitting at $1,000 plus depending upon which one, then I definitely think that's where your theory of getting in where there's not that love priced in can be a really good strategy, because eventually you can easily rekindle that love over time, because nostalgia will make people feel a certain way because it has a lot of sentiment towards their childhood.
Yeah, for like regular investing for stocks, there's like almost always a catalyst for any kind of major change. And I think you just gave some great examples of like catalyst that can be in Pokemon when they do those reprint games, not reprint, but like remake games. That's like a great way for them to kind of bring back some love for those older things. And actually, maybe I should go check the prices of some of my level X cards now, because I haven't checked them in a long time. So there could be some upside there. So that's good to know, just personally. So that's good for me.
If you got any in near mint condition, you gotta buy it right here. That's for sure. So
I do have nostalgia for those, the Rayquaza and the many different Arceus level X's there were, because those ones just like look so clean. Yes, the like white on white. It's also maybe I do have some nostalgia for level X's that's just suppressed. Yeah, those are great. Because like V stars I think look so much better, but they like remind me so much of level X's. I don't know if you feel the same, but like V Maxes I thought looked kind of like trash. I don't like them personally. At least the regular ones like Alt Arts. They're good. But like the regular ones, I'm not a fan of. But I think V stars just look so good. The white, I think, is a much better aesthetic.
No, I 100% agree. I mean, just looking at the card right now, it's got a white bordering, and then the actual name for the Arceus is in gold. And so that's exactly where my mind went when they came out with the V stars. I'm like, man, this feels so much like a level X design. And so I definitely 100% agree with you on that. As far as the V Max, I mean, the rainbows can be cool. But yeah, I was not the biggest fan of the V Maxes. I remember when they first came out with them, I was like, this is literally just them renaming GX to V Max, and then it has some sort of Galarian twist to it, which I absolutely despise the Gen 9 game. I thought it was terrible. I think the only thing that was good about it was the wild area, which I mean it definitely brings some change to it. But one question I wanted to ask you before we get off topic, so I actually asked this question last time when I had Nostalgianomics on, but I think this would also be a good one to ask you as well because of your background, especially since you follow the stock market. Obviously, you've been seeing everything that's been going on. We just had our quarterly report in regards to the GDP going negative. We haven't seen that since the start of the pandemic. My question for you is, what is your kind of outlook in regards to the overall, whether it be stock market, whether it be Pokemon, crypto? What are your kind of thoughts on how things could potentially shift if we do end up seeing another quarter come up negative and we officially are going into stagflation with a recession on the horizon?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question, and I think it's good to like get into the more like macro questions because I think those are really interesting. So I mean, I don't think it's looking like too good for like the short term. And I'm not, this is an original opinion, but a lot of people are predicting a recession. Obviously, if we have another quarter of negative GDP, that will like by definition be a recession. But something more significant happening like in the latter half of 2023, early 2024, just based off of like the quantitative tightening that's happening. We don't need to talk about like that in detail, but the Fed, like they're doing some, to simplify it, like they're doing some things for like the viewers. They're doing some things like that they don't normally do, and they're things that can very easily shock the market just based off of the impact that these rising rates naturally have on stocks, real estate, really like all forms of traditional investing. And I wonder how that will affect Pokemon. I'm definitely interested to see. But it's like a bit concerning because it's going to be a lot more expensive for people like to get houses now. So that's definitely going to start cooling off. But in terms of like uh, what's going to happen in like the next year or so, I'm not sure, but I think that we might see another negative quarter for GDP. I don't know if you agree, but I think we're kind of overdue for like a proper recession. It's just a part of the market cycle. And like in 2020, like we really skipped over something just because of all of the government aid that was sent out. The like helicopter money was like unprecedented, and it definitely created an interesting situation just for the general economy and for Pokemon as well.
Yeah, no, 100%. I agree. One of the things I've been recently talking to people about, specifically when talking about the housing market, the Wall Street Journal came out with an article not that long ago where they were talking about the housing market and how we've seen an unprecedented amount of homes being built because of the overwhelming demand. We actually have seen more homes being built at one time that we haven't seen since the early 70s. And then on top of that as well, in 2020, the average amount of buyers that bought purely in cash, it was about 50% of home buyers bought in cash. And they came out saying with the numbers so far for this year, it's currently around 25%. So it's shown that 50% less people are buying in cash. That could be a correlation to the fact that prices are on the rise. Obviously, we just had an increase in interest rates. We're going to at least see 3 or 4 more hikes within the next year. And so coupling that with each other, and then on top of the fact that you're also going to see more homes just continue to get built, I think you're just going to have an oversupply and a lack of demand thereof, which could transition into the housing market seeing a nice correction. Now, of course, everyone likes to say like, oh, Eli, is it going to be like a recessionary correction in the same way we had the Great Recession? I can't really speak on that behalf. I don't think it's out there to say you're going to at least see a 10% correction on, homes. But of course, I don't have a crystal ball. I'm just kind of going off of what the analytical data is showing me right now, and then historically what we've seen since '08. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that in regards to housing prices and so on.
Yeah, so my dad is actually in real estate. He actually used to be a developer. So you can imagine how 2008 went. Um, but yeah, so like he just talks about work. But basically, like my God, a few months ago, even like any listing basically that was for a reasonable price would like sell instantly at often like above asking prices, which is crazy. Like that's not normal. So it's already like started cooling off. Like these houses are like not selling as fast and are not selling for like above asking prices anymore. So it's cooled off. And I think that soon it's going to definitely be much more of a buyer's market than it has been, which I think might be good because that can potentially help counteract the rising interest rates, right? Because you can, if there's a smaller pool of buyers, obviously you'll be able to get things more affordably. I think that I don't know about like oversupply in the housing market. It's hard to say because there definitely is demand there, but I think the demand will definitely decrease. So in that context, I think maybe there will be. But it's hard to say because I don't have the exact numbers. I don't know them off the top of my head on like the actual supply side. But I can tell you, like just from like what I've heard firsthand, that at least where I live, which is like a suburban area that's like growing, like a lot of suburban areas are, that it's definitely slowed down. I think people are still buying, but I think it can definitely become much more of a buyer's market, and I think it will. So it's a tough call whether like if you're looking to buy property now, I feel like it's a tough call because on one hand, rates are probably going to continue to rise, but on the other hand, if you wait, you might be able to get a better deal. So if you're like paying with cash, probably maybe better to just wait, but most people aren't paying with cash anymore, like you're saying. So the situation's definitely changed a lot since the 70s. So it's interesting to see what's currently happening and to see what will happen. I don't know if we're going to see, I don't think the next like proper recession is going to be caused by the housing market because like typically like the triggers of these things aren't the same thing 2 times in a row. I mean, there are exceptions, but a lot of times, it varies because it's usually some like massive deficiency or error that like has to be corrected. And I think a lot of people still have like the Great Recession fresh in their memory, the people who were like really affected by it. So I don't know what you think of that.
No, I mean, yeah, there's definitely a lot of recency bias for sure. That's why everyone always asks that question. And of course, when you talk about what the overall debt sheet balance was back in '08 versus what it is now, I think a lot of people also have a different look on how they're like, it's kind of a lot worse nowadays than it was back then. But obviously, I think people put too much weight on it. I mean, the bill will come due one day, but from what we've seen, they've been able to keep pushing it off and off and off and off. But yeah, and like I said, going back with the oversupply of homes, when I say that necessarily, I just mean that they're still being produced in mass amounts that we haven't seen since the '70s. And so as far as it goes, as long as the demand keeps up, then they're just going to keep building the homes to demand. But when it goes down and they just keep printing, then in my mind, or printing, this is Pokemon, and they keep when they keep building, then in my mind, then there's gonna be these extra homes that are on the market that are going to affect the rest of them. But that's just kind of how I
I
look
think
at
the
it.
moral of the story is that houses in Pokemon are essentially interchangeable.
Yeah,
They're
right.
basically the same thing.
Well, that's actually an interesting point that I wanted to ask you. One of the things that I've learned a lot in life when it comes to looking at analytical data points on charts is they always say backtest your theories. Is that something that you practice a lot of, or when you kind of have an idea for something in regards to predicting the future, like I believe this item is going to do well based off of this, like what do you kind of look at as a way to kind of prove your theory as a potential hypothesis for why something will perform well based off of X, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no. I've definitely done some like proper back testing with Pokemon. Like when we're talking back testing, it's not going to be like as sophisticated as like when I can use the professional software and whatnot that you can go back to like 2006 and create a portfolio and simulate its performance like over that period of time. So I've done it like a decent amount with actual stocks and like even just like some like thought experiment type things. So one thing I remember doing is like I had to get, I think, a 4% dividend yield. Maybe it was, I think 4%. So I had to make a portfolio that averaged 4%, and I had to get something that would perform the best possible. And it was very interesting because really, like, that experiment really showed me that like chasing a dividend yield can be like really I don't know, it can really limit you when you have to have that dividend yield versus like, I mean, that's not really relevant. Sorry, I shouldn't get into that. This is just really tangential. But yes, for Pokemon, I've definitely done that. I've made at least one video talking about like going back and looking at these vintage packs and kind of trying to put those returns in perspective because like technically like on a raw numbers like Pokemon has outperformed the S&P 500, right? But like that doesn't account for the risk. So when I'm like going back and back testing, I would say like try and figure out like what is my required rate of return just based off of the risk profile. So like if I were buying base set packs in 1999, I mean that's really risky. Like I don't think many people are buying those as an investment, but if you were, because we're talking about like looking back saying, oh, base set was such a great investment, it would have been like the best thing you could buy. But when you put into perspective, like the required rate of return should be like really high, and that compounds over time. That maybe they're not outperforming what you would demand based off of the risk that much. And then for kind of projecting forward, you can do the same thing. So a lot of times, like before I buy something, like I'll think about like what return I would want on it. So I don't need like crazy returns. I'm like happy with like 10 to 15% would be great. That is high. That's high. But for like how risky Pokemon is, that's like not super high, I feel like to say. So it's like pretty reasonable. And then I would kind of look at based off of the price I would have to pay, what price I would need it to be for like investment to be worth it based off of what I'm saying. So, I actually was making a spreadsheet about this earlier today. Like, I'll look at like 1 year, 5 years, 10, and then sometimes 20. But like when you get that far out, it's like a crapshoot when we're talking about Pokemon. Like, you don't know if it's going to be around in 20 years, but it's good to look at. And the question is really like, do I think this product can hit these numbers? Like, can it maintain this growth? And a lot of the times I lean towards no. So that kind of helps me like filter out a lot of things that on the surface I think are like okay, but then when I go in and like do the numbers, I just feel like I can find better ways to spend my money if I'm like trying to get that return.
Do you have a general price point that you're kind of looking for on your ROI yearly? And then how much does the rate of inflation play a factor into, especially with the current past year or two, in your overall investment decisions when looking at taking something that is considered to be high risk or a lot safer?
Yeah, I mean, inflation, like, it's tough because, the market, like, likely isn't going to do well. Like, just talking about, like, the economy, like, probably isn't going to do that well in the next period of time. But also, your cash is, like, sitting there withering away because it's, like, 8%. And then if you use, like, the older versions of, like, the consumer price index and whatnot, some of them are measuring it, like, over 15% if we use the, like, OG methodology, which I'm not sure which we should say is better, but like either way, still very, very high. So, when you have the money parked in the Pokemon cards, you are kind of circumventing inflation. But also, if you're buying something, for example, like if you're buying like a Brilliant Stars ETB, if that's still on a shelf 2 years from now and the price has appreciated, like if Pokemon hasn't raised their prices enough to like match inflation, like you would have been better off waiting, right? Because you had paid this higher price based in like real dollars. So then when I'm thinking about buying things, like, and I'm projecting these out, I don't like add inflation into the calculations necessarily because I'm imagining it in like today's dollars, like, to keep the units the same, really. Because obviously, like, $100 5 years from now in like the money that's like the value it will be 5 years from now is not the same as today. So it's definitely something I keep in the back of my mind, but like when inflation is high, it's generally good to not be having that much cash. However, you want to keep a cash balance. So that's one thing that I feel like is always difficult to like navigate and figure out like what the right percentage is. I don't know what you feel about that, but I always want to have some cash in reserve personally, but it's hard when it's withering away.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm basically never sitting on cash. Like it's almost a bad habit to the point of where when I have money, I always have to park it somewhere. And I think, like I said, it's a little bit of a bad habit because I should always have at least some set aside. And it's not like I don't have some, but it's not like, I don't know, like 5 to 10% of my overall general portfolio. Which it's always nice to have that kind of cash security if something does end up coming up and you need the money right then and there. You don't have to liquidate some of your assets. Um, but yeah, no, I mean, when you're talking about consumer price index, I think that's actually something that's really good that you bring up. I talk about that a lot. I don't say specifically consumer price index. I just talk to people and say, yeah, you're talking about an 8% inflationary rate based off of unrealized or based off of what's realized. We haven't even talked about unrealized inflation because that's another thing that people really don't tend to discuss a lot. Is you'll see like, all right, so we just got a report that came out, a monthly inflation of 8% realized, and you're not even talking about unrealized because if you take a look at like wheat or chicken or some of these other items, the rate of inflation it's drastically higher than the general average that you're getting for the monthly. So obviously, you're going to always have different calculations in the way in which you do it. So I think it's definitely good to consider each and every one differently because of how much it's going to affect your everyday general spending in regards to how much more expensive things are going to be these days. So one thing you also did mention though, was you were talking about Brilliant Stars still being on the shelves and still seeing a return and they haven't printed it. One of the things that I talk about a lot on the channel as well, because like I said, I have a lot of knowledge on the general reprint patterns. How much weight do you put on overall, or I don't know how knowledgeable you are, but how much weight or knowledge do you have in regards to reprint patterns for the Pokemon Company, and or how much weight are you putting on sets that are currently in print versus out of print, or how do you like kind of look at things, and how does that affect your overall investment strategy, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so I think the timing in which you buy the set does matter a lot, because when you buy right on release, obviously there's opportunity cost, just because during that first 2-year period, like while it's still in print, it's probably not going to appreciate that much. I mean, now we're in a very different situation than like normally before 2020, but after 2 years is usually when they like stop printing a set. So that's when you're going to start seeing some more appreciation. So like if you can buy in like after maybe like the 18-month mark or something like that, you're going to reduce that like window where it's still potentially in print and you're just kind of sitting on it by a lot. Obviously now it's different because things are just like flying off the shelves, but I think prints definitely do matter. Something I've said is that honestly, like what's in the product isn't the only thing that matters at all. A lot of times like reprints and whatnot actually matter just as much. So Team Up, I think, is a great example of this. It was never reprinted. So booster box, I think right now is like $800. Whereas Cosmic Eclipse is arguably just as good a set, or very close. It's going for like 500. So that's kind of the difference that a reprint can make. So definitely mindful of reprints. However, like I don't get like too concerned with them. I would be more concerned if I were paying high prices for new products. So that's something I avoid doing because I'm afraid like that there might be a reprint. But if something has been reprinted, a lot of times it's a really great opportunity to buy because that's when everyone else is like freaking out and panic selling. So sometimes it's just good to buy right after the reprint. But it again depends how much it comes down and whatnot. So my knowledge of reprints is like only what I can like find online and on YouTube, because I obviously don't have a distributor, so I don't have that luxury. But I try to keep a general eye on it. But reprints, like as I said, like they can really affect the long-term value, but usually at the price point I'm paying, they aren't gonna decrease the value of what I'm buying too much. And a lot of times like Fusion Strike boxes, the demand is like really low right now. So it's questionable how much more they'll get reprinted, which is also like one potential benefit of sometimes buying those underloved sets, that they might not get reprinted as much more as other things where the demand is like crazy high.
So one thing I did want to say, one point that you had said that I wanted to kind of make known. So actually Cosmic Eclipse had the same amount of reprints as Team Up. So Team Up, it came out so Team Up came out early, like in February of 2019, and then Cosmic came out in late 2019. Cosmic Eclipse was actually scheduled to get a reprint, but then it ended up getting canceled because COVID ended up happening. And so that's one of the reasons why you see a lot of Cosmic Eclipse packs popping up. Like you saw Cosmic, obviously, in the Galar Friends, you see them in the Arceus figure collection, you saw them in the D21 Pokeballs, and you see them pop up in the Meowth VMAX special collection. So that's kind of one of the reasons why you see a lot of that Cosmic stuff, because it's actually just old reprinted product that never got put in booster boxes.
That's interesting. So the booster box supply, like the pack supply maybe is the same, but in terms of actual sealed booster boxes, maybe it's being underappreciated, because I don't think that's common knowledge at all. So that's actually really good to know. So
yeah,
maybe I can justify $500 for a booster box of it.
Well, that's the
I've been
thing.
thinking about it.
Well, that's the thing, is it's like in my mind, when I look at the value of Team Up and I look up the value of Cosmic, you're saying to yourself, okay, Cosmic came out in what, November versus February? That's like, I don't know, a 9-month difference, and you're saying that it's going to yield another $100, $200, $300 depending upon where you're able to get Team Up versus Cosmic. I'm saying to myself, for a year's worth, and the set of Cosmic has such, in my opinion at least, a greater set, considering it has that subset, and maybe it's because Team Up has the Gengar, it has the Venusaur, and some of these other ones, but it's not like you don't have the Charizard and so on and so forth in the Cosmic as well. So yeah, it's definitely very interesting to see with that in regards to printing. So, but yeah, I would say other than that though, like generally speaking, everything you were saying, I basically 100% agreed with. I just want to
Yeah.
make that. I just want to make that known. So, because yeah, that
Now
is
I have
something.
something new to add to
Yeah,
my buy list because
yeah.
that's definitely swayed me because, obviously, like, even if there's the same amount of packs floating around, sealed just like increases disproportionately more, like when we're talking the booster boxes versus loose packs. And like clearly I like custom eclipse. I have a ETB back there. I think it's chef's kiss. So good. It's one of my favorite modern sets of all time. The altered Arceus tag team card is so sick.
So gorgeous. Yeah, I mean, being a huge Gen 4 fan and a huge Gen 5 fan, and you get the best of both worlds in that set, it's awesome. They absolutely crushed it and
Yeah,
out of the world. So
that's why I like Brilliant Stars as well, kind of. But now I'm actually really excited for Astral Radiance. I know a lot of people aren't, but like, I don't know if you've seen the Palkia that's coming out. That card is so amazing. It's so cool.
yeah, it's got the MC Etcher design. That's one of the things
Yeah,
people are
yeah.
talking about a lot.
It's like the visual illusion. It's so cool to see them kind of incorporating that. It's also cool to see them taking like influence from like actual existing art. That's like just such an unusual card. So I think that's going to be a card that will be pretty popular, like down the line. I think it's just so cool.
So that'll be a good point of discussion for the next topic. Obviously, I don't know if you've seen what's been revealed so far, or what we kind of know what's going on with the Pokemon Go set, and what's going on with Astral. But I'll just let everyone else know. Pokemon Go just released a statement saying, or I should say Pokemon Beach did, announce that Pokemon Go is going to include 3 Astral cards specifically, which are going to be the 3 original starters. So you're going to have Venusaur, Blastoise, and Charizard.
You mean Radiant, by the way?
What is Radiant?
You said 3 Astral cards?
Oh my god, I'm so
3
sorry.
Radiant?
3
No,
Radiant.
yeah, I get it. 'Cause
Astral,
you're
yeah,
talking
I'm
about
mixing
Astral
my
Radiant.
my bad. Yeah, they're gonna have 3 Radiant cards, and for those people who don't know what those are, they are basically just a shiny version of a card. Like when I say shiny, I mean like like a different coloration of the individual Pokemon. And then it has a very different texturing, kind of like most comparable to like the Radiant Collection set. It's going to be basically like they took the Radiant Collection set and they infused that with the shiny Pokemon. So they're going to be they just announced with Pokemon Go, they're going to have the 3 starters, and they also are going to have the shiny Eevee version.
Mhm.
And then of course as well, you also have Astral Radiance, which still has about, I want to say, 11 more cards that still have yet to be revealed. 9 or 11. I can't remember how many of the character subset. With that being said, for the people that didn't know that information, I just wanted to relay it. How much has the news of Pokemon Go, or just the fact that, everything we know about Astral and potentially how that could change with the next 11 cards, where are you kind of looking to that? I want to hear what your sentiment is about it.
Yeah, I had really, really low hopes for the Pokemon Go set because I was afraid that they were just gonna like, do you know the Pokemon Rumble cards? I was afraid they were like gonna do something like that where it's just like CGI pictures, like basically exported from Pokemon Go, and just like looking terrible. But they actually just went with a variety of artworks, which I do appreciate. I think like the Radiant Eevee, very, very nice looking card in my opinion. So I was impressed with the direction that they actually went with it. So I've ordered the Pokemon Center, ETB of course, and the Radiant collection. I'm not like gonna pick up an insane amount of this set, I don't think. If I can get the special collections with Blanche and the others in them at MSRP, I will. But like uh, it's hard to say. I'm wondering how easy how easy it will be to pull those 3 starters. It's interesting though because we don't see a lot of shiny Venusaur and Blastoise. Like we see Charizard all the time, but like the other 2 are a bit more unique. So that's actually kind of exciting to see. And I think it's hard to say how they'll go with pull rates. Like if they're gonna pull like in other celebrations where things are really easy to pull, I don't know if they will. But it is a really small set, so I think that in terms of people actually opening it, people probably aren't going to open that much because I imagine you can get most of the set without having to open nearly as many packs as you would for something like Brilliant Stars. So there would probably be a higher percentage of people keeping this sealed. That's not always a bad thing. And again, depends how much it's printed. Because like in general, I do really like buying special sets, just because they have historically outperformed. And even though like we know that now, so more people are probably going to be keeping them sealed, I think they will still continue to do so. But then Astral Radiance, I think it's a very cool set. Like it's not it doesn't have the same mainstream appeal, obviously, as like Evolving Skies would, that would just make everyone so excited about it. But I think it has enough cards in it that like 10 years down the line, it'll still be remembered, I think, as a pretty good set. I think people will probably be more excited about it. And I think probably a lot of people are just going to be skipping it for the Pokemon Go set. That's what I've heard some other people say. And to me, like, sometimes that's kind of a good sign. Because, like we were saying earlier, when something's underappreciated, that's where you've got that opportunity. And, like, if you're buying quite a variety of things that you think are underappreciated or just like generally are, then you might have like one or two winners in there that like really outperform, and the others will still probably, I think, do okay at least. And I think that Astral Reigns could definitely do that because clearly there are a lot of people who really care about Gen 4, obviously, as we've established here today. And I think, 10 years from now when they remake Diamond and Pearl again, hey, it'll probably do pretty well then.
We're still waiting on that Gen 5 remake now. I feel like a lot of people were, including myself, disappointed a lot because they said they were going to have a faithful remake, but they said the same exact thing for Oros, and they had such a good gameplay for after you beat the main storyline with the Delta series. And so considering that they didn't have that with Diamond and Pearl remade, and then on top of that, when you're talking about Pokemon Platinum, which had a really good after series, the fact that they didn't at least even incorporate that, I feel like definitely had a lot of people bummed out. Also, I'd be interested to see on your take as well. This is a little bit off topic. Well, I shouldn't say off topic, but this is a little bit of a different take. How much do you think the variations or the forms of the Dialga and the Palkia are going to affect the future value of Astral Radiance from its collectability? Because as someone who's a Gen 4 fan, obviously those are some of my favorite legendaries, but there's been a lot of disdain for the overall designs.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm curious, how much do you think that will play to people's nostalgia when they look at that card compared to the actual original form?
Yeah, I don't know why Palkia turned into a horse. But like, to be fair, like I dislike those designs, but I mean, they did enough to make me really want that Palkia card, even though I don't like Origin form. Maybe it's because it's like kind of small in the picture, so I can just like, pretend it's the normal version and not Origin form. But I mean, it's hard to say. I think also some of them are pretty cool. The Typhlosion, I think looks pretty cool. I don't know what you think, but I think he's a gangster. So long term, I think it might have an impact, but then you can make an argument as well about like V Maxes and whatnot. And then we can look at Megas. Megas I don't think are the most popular cards anymore, but it could also just be that they don't look very good, which I would say. Um, it's really hard to say. I think a lot of times also, maybe in 10 years or 15 years, we're going to have the people who remember these as kids, obviously, and they'll have nostalgia for these. They aren't going to like hate it as much as we do because like it's like messing with something from our childhood and like we think it looks wrong, but to them, maybe that's just like what they remember it as. So they won't have that personal disdain for it, and they might have the same nostalgia that you have for original Diamond and Pearl and that type of thing.
No, I think that's an absolute great point to make. And that's one of the things I like to talk about a lot when I have other people who grew up with, being huge Gen 1 fans, huge Gen 2, so on and so forth. Because I always want to keep that in hindsight because I never want to have that sort of bias. I mean, the best way to explain it for me, and I don't know how you feel about what I'm about to say, but I'll get your input after. As far as what you heard with the internet, when the internet first came out, a lot of people thought the internet wasn't going to be a big thing. And you obviously had, people like Bill Gates, and you had people like Elon Musk, or you had people like just big, how do I want to say this, companies and corporations that basically were founded and built off the internet. I don't know if Elon Musk is a good example. Obviously, he's been more prevalent, but I just thought of PayPal in kind of my mind. But of course, you also have Steve Jobs, can't leave him out. And from that, of course, the internet and the era of the internet has ushered just to completely and revolutionize just the way in which we live in our world currently speaking. One of the biggest things in how I'm going to correlate this is when you look at cryptocurrencies and what they can do from a banking perspective, you hear a lot of the same people that when they built their company off of the internet, and you heard older people saying the internet's never going to become anything. People such as Bill Gates, and of course he proved them wrong. Now you hear people such as Bill Gates who prove people wrong, now telling the same exact people in the crypto space that it's going to become nothing, it's not the future, and so on and so forth. And so for my point that I'm making of that is I never want to be a part of, that old mentality of not understanding. And therefore, because it's something I can't understand, I'm going to, be against it. And so in regards to, I might hate Gen 8, I might hate Gen 9, think they're absolute garbage. But like you're saying, 10, 15 plus years from now, inevitably speaking, you're going to have that nostalgic feel from the kids that grew up in that era that are going to love it. And so even though it's one of these things where it's like, all right, I don't like it, but I have to still take that into consideration from an investment perspective, especially when you do have those sets that, are heavily built around some of the cards that are in the Gen 9 and Gen 8, which is one of the reasons why I think Shining Fates will do really well long term. Because even though Shining Fates, of course, has a very underwhelming, I would say, shiny subset and full art set and so on and so forth, in the future, people that are going to grow up as Galar fans are going to enjoy the artwork. And it still has some Gen 1 cards that are shiny. It has the Charizard, it has a Lapras, it has the Ditto. So, of course, it's not a Hidden Fates because Hidden Fates has a lot more variety. But I do think for the fact that you're able to literally go pick it up at MSRP right now when people are clamoring for it at one point for around 90, $100 and so on and so forth. I think having that just sense of heightened awareness and not let your kind of general feelings towards something prevent you from missing out on an opportunity, if that makes sense. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Oh, for sure. No, I agree 100%. And I used to be like a camp counselor like when I was like 16, 17, and like the kids all collected Pokemon, obviously, because like summer camp, what better place to bring your Pokemon cards than a playground with a million wood chips? That's what I don't want. And I
So
remember
true.
like they had cards and they loved cards that I was personally like, ugh, not my favorite, but like it's what they really like. And also, really, what I'm hearing, Eli, is that you hate boomers, and that's okay.
Well, actually, what
Um,
I'm hearing, Ava, is that you just ripped off a bunch of 6-year-olds because you decided that, hey, I don't like these cards. I can easily schmoz them and then take some of their better cards. That's what I'm hearing
I wouldn't
as a
trade with
camp
those
counselor.
children. I wouldn't trade with them.
Oh my
Occasionally, I'd
god.
like give them a card or whatever, but like I don't want to like sacrifice my integrity like that. I would never
Oh.
want to be one of those adults scamming a kid out of like a $50 card, with like a $5 card. That's evil.
That's
Those are
okay.
things.
You can say
But
that
like
for the
they're like
camera.
they've
No.
got like break cards and stuff. Like how am I supposed to like those? I can't.
That's fair.
But I no, I agree 100%. And I feel like because like you and me, obviously we both have different experiences than most of the people making videos on this. Every time I hear them say that like everyone loves vintage and like it's always going to be the best and that's really what everyone's favorite is always going to be. I'm like, I don't know about that. Like I just like I like the vintage cards and I like their place in the history, but I don't like buy them just because they're like Watsy. I only buy the ones that I like that I would like even if they came out today. And I think like also, we'll probably mellow out our feelings towards these new forms if they continue using them in the future. I don't know if they will. A lot of times Pokemon likes to throw out new forms and then never address them again once we go to like a new region. But if they do, then I could see, people definitely like changing their tunes toward it. And again, like if I took out my personal bias against like origin forms for those cards, Objectively, they're really, really nice cards. Well, everything is subjective when we're talking about appearances, but like if I imagine myself not being biased against them, they are really, really cool. And not everyone's going to have that bias, especially a long time from now, which, could mean that there's going to be a new potential demographic for those in 15 years if the kids who are collecting these now, really love them. And I think also that's why ultra modern will continue to do well. I think someone said in the comments, but today's modern will eventually become vintage, which is true. It will never really achieve like the same as like the OG stuff, but it'll become old and it'll become something that some adult will want at some point.
Yeah.
And will pay an irrational amount to relive their childhood. And that's what we're looking for here.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, one of the like kind of things I like to go off of, and I've heard other people say something very similar. It's like you've got your WotC era, then you've got your vintage era, which is kind of like at this point, EX, Diamond and Pearl, Black and White era, Heart Gold, Soul Silver, and then you've got your modern era, like slash
Black
older.
and White count as vintage now? I feel old.
That's what I hear a lot of people saying, and I personally would also agree with that statement. I would say the last era that I would consider to be vintage, and you can call it newer vintage if you want, would be that Black, White, Heart Gold. So because I lump together everything WotC, e-reader, so on and so forth as kind of like, that's like a class of its own. Like there's vintage and then there's WotC era vintage, right? So it's like WotC vintage, then you've got vintage EX, DP, and then you've got newer vintage, which is Black, White, Heart Gold, and then you have older modern, which is XY era, and then Sun and Moon's kind of stuck in the middle, and then you've got ultra modern, which is Sword and Shield. So yeah, no, that's kind of how I like to classify it. But yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see because XY is about to become vintage pretty soon here in the next, couple years or so. And you're going to see the same thing happen with Sun and Moon in the next 10, which is going to be weird to think about. But so one thing I wanted to say now, so we're about half an hour. We're about half an hour away from wrapping up the stream. So we're going to start taking questions for anyone that has it. It's so funny. I don't know if you ever do this as well, but like sometimes I'll like see a comment that someone makes and I feel like I want to comment on it because it's so funny.
Sometimes I've been replying to a few comments in the chat while just like randomly.
No, I just literally saw who was it who said that? John was saying that I totally convinced my sister to trade her good cards for the pretty ones that I had. Like, you don't want an ugly Blastoise, here's a Clefairy. I'm like, oh, that's terrible. I read that and I was like, yo, talk about schemazing. Oh my goodness. But yeah, we'll start. So if you guys have any questions that you want us to answer, I'll go back through and
should we start at the top?
Yeah,
so that those ones don't get missed.
Yeah,
there are like questions peppered.
Yeah, let me see if I can pull up because I also have an app that can go all the way back and look at everything in the chat, so I don't just miss everything.
I just have the thing open.
Oh,
or does that only show a limited amount?
Oh gosh, dang it! Restream, it doesn't show.
Here's a question that we can look at.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Figure that out. This is Edgar. He asks, how would you tell or feel like a card can be worth of value in the future?
Oh yeah, I see that one. You start off.
Man, see, this one is like, this is tough because I don't ever like make predictions about individual cards like on my channel or like recommend them to people because like I just would like, I feel like it's very risky. And also like, there's so many things that it depends on. But obviously rarity is one of them, like the relationship for supply versus demand. Like obviously there are things that are pretty rare, but like nobody wants, so they're still not that expensive. What else? The art is most important to me personally. I think a lot of times like Japanese exclusive cards can actually be like some of the best. There are a lot of promos. A lot of times things that like aren't in main sets, I would say, like things that are in special sets can do really, really well. But I don't know what you think. There's definitely a lot to say about this though.
I mean, basically you were going to say everything I was going to say. For me, it's such a loaded question because the only way I can really tell you, because everything I base my information off of is based off of history. So when we're talking about cards, which I know are going to do well, it's going to be the character cards that historically have done well. And like Ava was saying, in regards to, there are some cards that are very low supply but low demand, and so because of that, they're not valued as much. And whether it be because it's a character card that a lot of people don't care about, or it's a card that a lot of people don't know of. One of the ones I like to point to the most when having this discussion is there's a lenticular Deoxys, which I've seen sell in a PSA 10 and sell in a PSA 9 for, in my personal opinion, what is drastically undervalued. But of course, if that's a card that a lot of people aren't a big fan of, don't know about, then it's going to have a different market value to it, considering it is one of a kind card. It was a promo card that was given out for the Deoxys movie. So there's a lot of argument to be made about that. And then as far as future supply goes, one of the things that I like to kind of make predictions on, and this might be an extremely risky bet that I'm making, but hey, half of it is a part of my collection, so it's more or less collection first and risk next. But one of the things that I feel in terms of how I like to look at things is when you take a look at the amount of influencers that have come into the hobby, I've noticed, I mean, a lot of these influencers are extremely wealthy, and they've brought a lot of wealthy individuals into the hobby. And because of that, you see celebrities wanting to master collect or master set things, whether it be they want to, master set first edition, all the commons, uncommons, and tens, or whether it'll eventually transition into collecting EX era with wanting each reverse holo and all the gold stars and so on and so forth. So personally, for myself in my own collection, but also I think for the future of investing, I have a belief that I think that'll transition into the EX era. I think you see a lot of cards, for example, such as the reverse holo stamp cards in PSA 10 that are extremely cheap for how low of a population they are. And even though you might say to yourself right now, well, that's because no one wants them, I think there are going to be a large amount of collectors that are exorbitantly wealthy that you're going to see want to collect those and master set those cards, because master setting is something that a lot of people like to do, whether they like to do it for the raw cards. Like for most people, like average everyday, raw cards are going to be a lot like more affordable when you're talking about it costs you, if you want to collect power keepers, it's going to cost you around $1,000 to master set the whole thing raw in your mint condition. And then of course it's going to cost way more if you want it in PSA 9 or 10. So that's just kind of the way in which I like to look at things. But I always like to look at it from different perspectives and try and look at opportunity in the market. So it's a really hard one to ask. I know that was a lot, but hopefully that makes sense. I don't know if you have any points to that. One thing I want to say though, I want to give a shout out to Polkadata. Shout out to you guys. Thank you so much for the donation. Seriously, it means a lot. Love these Q&A sessions. Keep up the good work. Thank you so much. If it's Justin, shout out to Justin, brother. Thank you so much once again. Yeah, no, do you have any points to make on anything that I said?
I feel like you gave a really good, thorough answer there. And in regards to the Delta species cards, I personally like, in that era, where they had the stamped reverse hollows. I love the stamped reverse hollows. I do think a lot of like the Delta species cards and whatnot, that are associated with them are kind of ugly. But there are a few. There are some that are like some of the best looking Pokemon cards, in my opinion. There's a Gyarados that is just amazing. I think that is such a cool card. There's some Rayquaza ones. There are like a lot of gems there that these ones aren't the cheapest, right? So like when you're talking master set, you can get some of these like quite cheap. But some of these other ones are more expensive, but I still think that there is like potential there for those, because those appeal to like people who aren't just going for master sets as well, or happen to have like a strange Pokemon that they prefer. So I think whether it's like the really affordable ones or maybe the slightly higher end ones, those have potential. And then another thing that I just wanted to mention were cards that come out in like atypical ways. So I mentioned like Japanese exclusive cards there. But then another one would be, for example, like the special delivery Pikachu, those types of cards. Those ones have already seen like massive appreciation. But that's like not what typically will happen. Like they won't normally get that expensive that quickly. But like obviously we are in a different time now. So those types of cards I definitely think have a lot of potential. And
Yeah.
again, there are so many Japanese exclusive cards that do really, really well, especially Japanese Pokemon Center exclusive cards can do really, really well.
Yeah, no, 100%. And another thing I wanted to bring up, and this is actually something that it's gonna be weird saying this out loud, but there's a little secret that I like to put in regards to investing, and some people, I mean, you can look at it however you want to look at it. But one of the reasons why I say some of even these ugly stamp cards can be of value is from my personal experience, and this is a little insider information for some of the people I discuss. I know of a lot of individuals where you're saying, really, you want that card and you're willing to pay that much for it? And they're like, yes, because I have to own every single one. And so there are some people that, in regards to Diamond and Pearl era, EX era, that have offered me large amounts of money for specific cards that I never would have thought, but they need that specific card because sure, they can say, I'd much rather pay $300-400 for a reverse common card in PSA 10, but considering it's pop 3 and I can't find it anywhere else, and I know you have it, I can buy it right now, it's going to be a lot cheaper for me to do that than go through and open a booster box and hope that I pull it in to get to 10. So that's something that's very interesting to consider, because I know a lot of people, specifically in the Diamond and Pearl era, but also in the EX era, that if you actually hold the market value of having such a low population on an item, long term, there's a lot of collectors that are willing to pay stupid money for cards that you would have never expected to be so expensive. Like I said before, it's a little bit something that some people might not consider, but I can tell you what, there are definitely fanatics out there that like to master set, and they're definitely willing to pay a pretty penny if
I mean,
it's a
I
low
do
pop.
get that. Like, I don't master set like actual sets or
Mm.
specific types of things, except I might do one for shinings. And like now that I have the Lugia and I have a couple other ones, I feel like maybe I should just do a master set for crystals. But those are much smaller. But like in terms of like, for example, Entei, like I'll pay hundreds of dollars for like Team Rocket's Entei EX, even though I think it's a hideous card. Like it is a desirable, like not super desirable. It's like a B tier Pokemon, I think most people would say. So it's not bad, but it's like not the best. But even like the ugly printings, I have to have, and like, you know, I want to have them in good condition. Or even more so, Team Magma's Entei EX, you know that one. I don't know if you know that card. It's hideous.
No, I know that card.
It's disgusting, but I had to get it for my collection. So there is like a place, even for ugly cards, you know, I don't buy a lot of them, but the ones I want to get, like I have to have, and sometimes there aren't that many floating around. So you just have to pay whatever they're going for.
No, 100%. Yeah, no, it's funny, man. There's always going to be value in the market. You just got to be able to be creative enough or think about it or find it. All right, let's look at another question we could ask. Do you want to go from the top or from the bottom? Because I see one that someone just commented, but I also see an older one that someone asked.
We can do the older one, but we can do a few of the new ones too.
So Evo Me asked, what is, and hopefully I'm not skipping anyone, but I saw a question mark. So if I see a question mark, then I'm more willing to answer. What is the best black and white booster box to invest in? I need one, but not sure which one is good. Oh, I love this question. I want you to go first.
Oh man, it's hard for me to say because like I've actually been debating buying some older booster boxes, and like black and white is expensive, but it's like still within the realm of possibility. I do really, really like Dark Explorers, and I think Plasma Storm are both pretty good sets, but it's hard to say. I don't know. I haven't checked the prices recently on them, but I think like, man, the Dark Explorers one for me, like it has some cards in it that like are some of my favorite of all time, because there is an Entei in it, and there is that Gardevoir, there's the Darkrai, Kyogre, Raikou, Groudon also in that one. So there's like a decent amount of good cards in there, but I don't know what you think.
So it's interesting because I'm gonna say a couple of ones that are a little different. So the first one that I'm going to say is I'm going to say Legendary Treasures.
Oh, okay, yeah. Legendary Treasures is very, very good. It's a very cool set.
And it's interesting too because I follow booster box prices very heavily for Black and White and Diamond and Pearl, so that's why I love this question. But Legendary Treasures, for the overall booster box price that you're allowed to get it for around, just to give you an example, it just recently sold on auction for around $2,600, so you can still get it in that $2,600 to $3K price point. Which you might say that's pretty expensive, but if you look at generally a lot of the other sets that are sub 2,000, most of them are like the emerging powers. Most of them are like the base set. There's nothing really like super exciting that's under 2K. Another one I was going to mention, and I'll still bring it up, it was going to be Plasma Freeze, because for a while you actually were able to pick up Plasma Freeze for really cheap, but the price of Plasma Freeze has gone up quite a bit, sadly. From it, just if you're like on a budget, balling on a budget, I do know you can still pick up Plasma Blast for around 1,200 to 1,600, but it's probably the least desired next to emerging powers, I would say. So I don't know if that's a set that I would go with. As for Plasma Storm, although I think it's an amazing set, it's the most desired one, so that one's going to be extremely expensive. I think you're probably looking around 6,000 to 7,000 for that one. So it's really, really tough in regards to what you're looking for. If you're looking from, I just want to collect this item, like I said, cheapest one, you're going to get that Plasma Blast, you're going to get that base set. If you're looking for value, I think Mysterious Treasures, or sorry, not Mysterious Treasures, Legendary Treasures, you're going to get the most value out of that. But if you just want the best of the best, then probably something like a Dark Explorers or a Plasma Storm, because those are the two most expensive ones.
Yeah, I went for like I really just went off of personal preference.
Yeah,
there.
no, for sure.
But I think Legendary Treasures I actually just like forgot about for a minute. I think that one, especially with the prices you're saying, is the one I would go for. So because I've been thinking about buying some older booster boxes potentially. If I were going to buy a Black and White one, just based off of the value to prices that you like gave, I would definitely go for Legendary Treasures.
Yeah,
I care about being on the safe side.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's like that middle of the road price, and you're gonna get a lot of value out of it.
There's a lot of great stuff in that set.
Yeah, and then other than that, the only ones that I can really think of, I mean, Noble Victories is a cool set. Next Destinies is pretty affordable, I would say. I mean, you could also make an argument for Dragons Exalted. So at this point, I'm just listing all of them, though. That's kind of hard. So yeah, but I would still say, I'm going to still keep it at Legendary Treasures, though. I'm going to say that one is probably the one. I would love to hear as well, Raheem. Yeah, Raheem says Dragons Exalted. I would love to hear his opinion. Him and I go back and forth a lot because he's a huge Gen 4 fan. Let's actually look up Dragons Exalted. I want to know what the value of that is for a Dragons Exalted booster box, and then we can also make a point to that. So it looks like it's going for around 3K. A little bit under is what you can buy it for now.
Then you can probably get it even cheaper at auctions.
Yeah,
that's not bad.
That's another thing I want to look at. So you can get it around auction for around anywhere between 25 to 28. And Dragons Exalted, just so we can go over that one, because I wanted to make sure I didn't miss this one, because I was trying to remember what the price point of Dragons was, because I saw it for around 3K the other day. But as far as what's in the set itself, it has a shiny Rayquaza in it. It has a Rayquaza EX Full Art. It has a Giratina. It has a Mew. So Dragons Exalted is what I would say is the number two next to Radiant Collections for Legendary Treasures. I know. Oh man, that's a tough one, man. I think they're both amazing. I think you can't go wrong with either. A part of me wants to put, Legendary Treasures right above it just because it is such a good collection. But when you're talking about the fact that Dragons Exalted does have that anchor card, such as a shiny Rayquaza, it's going to be really hard to compete with that long term as a set, because if you look at any of the sets that do include some of those top tier shiny cards, the value of them long term is I mean, they're some of the most expensive ones. I'm just such a huge fan of Gen 5 with the gold Zekrom and gold Reshiram. So for me, it's like, oh, which one do I like more? But I guess I put them neck and neck. You can't go wrong with either of them. If I'm being completely honest, I think the best general strategy is whichever one you can get cheaper. I think that'll be a good strategy because you can't go wrong. So if you can snag one up for around that 2,800, 2,500, then I think whichever one it is, you're gonna definitely hit a home run with it. So, all right, let's see. What's another one you think that we could go on for another question? If there's anyone you see, let's see if there's any other questions. Man, we're giving such thorough answers. So here's a short one. I'll just answer. But Trax says Unified Minds considered vintage.
Yeah.
I would not say it's considered vintage, Trax, because for me, how I like to look at vintage is it's about 10 years old or older is kind of the like milestone that I like to look at things. So black and white is like on the cusp of basically being vintage because of when the last set came out. I think it was 2013, and then XY came out 2014. And since we're on 2022, we're basically at that point of like black white's newer vintage and then XY. But since we literally had a reprint for Unified Minds last year, was it last year or 2 years ago in 2022, or sorry, 2020 or 2021? I can't remember specifically.
I think it was 2020.
Was it 2020? I can't remember.
Yeah, because I think I remember the price dropping.
It must have been at the end of 2020. A little bit. It must have been at the end. But yeah, no, we had a reprint for that not long ago, so that's just not it. But here's one Edgar asked. It says, this is a broad question. Thanks, guys, even Pokemarket. You think Hidden Fates in the future will grow more value, like fall along the lane like Gold Star Vintage cards?
Do you want to take this first, or should I?
I always want you to go first. It's up to you, though.
Okay. I don't. So the Gold Star cards, like, they're like pretty rare. Just because of how like Pokemon wasn't that popular at the time, and again, like people didn't like them that much, and I can understand why, because I think they're a bit overhyped now. I don't think they're the best looking cards for the most part, to be honest.
Those are fighting words.
What?
I said those are fighting words. No, I'm just kidding.
I know, so controversial. But I don't think that it's gonna grow at that rate, just because, again, the Gold Stars, like, people weren't treating them the way that Hidden Fates is being treated, where everyone is acknowledging how great Hidden Fates is. And I think people are like being protective of the singles they have. They're taking good care of them, or they're keeping it sealed. So I don't think we're going to see like that crazy growth. But I mean, I do think it'll do well because, as I said, it's like considered a very good set, and it is a very good set.
I think, and this is going to be such a non-answer, but I think this is the only way I can give the answer. The two things you have to understand when talking about the value that you're going to be getting out of Hidden Fates compared to Gold Star. Let's take my favorite Gold Star card, and probably one of my favorite cards of all time, is the Mew Gold Star. Absolutely love the design.
That is a good one.
I know a lot of people aren't a big fan of the yellow borders, but still, if you look at the general card, I think it's gorgeous. The PSA 10 just recently sold on auction for $6,500, and it's about 65 in a PSA population report, right? If we're going and we're having a conversation about what the Charizard is in its overall population for a PSA 10, it's sitting at roughly around 3,803. So the like ratio of PSA 10 to PSA 10 when you're comparing it from the Charizard to the Mew, and that's one of the most desired cards right next to, of course, the Charizard for the Gold Star Charizard. In Dragon Frontiers, of course, we have the Rayquaza. When you're comparing that set versus the whole era of Gold Stars, the question you really have to ask yourself is, okay, if we look at the pace of which the value of a Charizard right now, and even at its peak, right? This shiny Charizard at its peak was selling for around 2K. Now it's selling for around 800 for a PSA 10. And for considering the fact that this is considered to be an ultra modern item, that's still extremely expensive. I mean, you're telling me you can go buy a Gold Star 9 for around the same price, right? And so it already shows that there is such an extremely high demand. Now, the question you have to ask yourself is, do you think long term the exponential like growth of this hobby in regards to demand is going to scale enough to where it's going to continue to outpace the supply of the PSA population for the Charizard GXs that are going to keep adding on to the population. Because another thing you want to also take into consideration is back in March, we had a reprint for those Hidden Fates ETBs, and PSA closed down right around the same time. And of course, although the population, you did see a large amount of them get added on to the database, you're going to see a lot of them still get sent in for grading for PSA 9s, PSA 10s, on top of the fact of the matter, when you're talking about that there's more PSA 10 in population than there are PSA 9s. So it shows you that how the scalability of inflation in regards to the supply is going to be, it's going to be a lot easier for that 10 to increase versus gold stars. There's going to be maybe one or two that'll be added on each year, if any. So that's not to say, of course, the demand isn't exorbitantly high, that it's going to still perform extremely well. But in regards to will it outpace something like a gold star, I think that's a really hard statement to make. But I could still see them performing really well just because of how high the demand is for these kind of shiny cards. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on everything I just said?
Yeah, I was initially reading it like, do I think that they will like approach a similar level as gold stars? But if we're talking about future growth and like percentages and like what's going to outpace what, I think I agree with you. I think maybe there will be like a few cards within Hidden Fates that will just like outperform other ones, but that's just going to be like kind of random crapshoot. I couldn't tell you which ones it's going to be. Maybe there are some that are underappreciated now that might continue to appreciate later. But again, like you said, the supply is so much higher, and just the potential for the supply to increase, because Hidden Fates ETBs, like, they're expensive for how old it is, but like they're not prohibitively expensive that people aren't going to crack them open if there's something of value inside. You know, people are still cracking Hidden Fates open, and you could even argue that like at the current prices, it's like maybe worth it to open them. At least, you know, maybe close enough if you're getting like some actually good PSA grades if you're grading them. So I don't think that they are gonna outpace the gold stars. Again, it depends on how popular they remain, but like they have like blown up in the past few years and become incredibly popular. And I don't think the supply is going to grow that much, except for the legendary dogs, which I have back here because someone stole a bunch of them. So there is like a massive amount of those, but I had to buy those for my collection.
Here's an interesting question. Do you think that you could see the price, and this will be an interesting one to hear your thoughts on. I feel like I already know the answer, but I still want to ask it. Do you think you could see the value for the shiny Charizard GX in the next 5 years go to $3,000 or more?
Me? Personally?
Yes. What do you think? What do you think you could see realistically in the next 5 to 10 years for that card?
I mean, it's hard for me to say because it's like I just like can't understand the mindset of the like Charizard fanaticism, because I'm just like I'm not part of the hype club, you know, for Charizard. But I mean, I think it'll go over 1,000 again for sure. It also depends on like where Pokemon is in 5 years and like also the economy as a whole. But maybe like high end, like 1,500. But I just don't see 3,000 happening in 5 years, because that would be like increasing by like 366%, 266%, which is a lot to expect in 5 years. And I just don't see it because it's like, it's not that rare, like you were saying.
Yeah, and I think one thing I want people to understand when you're talking about even cards such as, sorry, excuse me.
No, you're good.
Even cards such as in the Diamond and Pearl era, the Platinum era, the Heart Gold Soul Silver era, like those have just as low of a population report, if not even lower, and they're only a couple years like younger, and they're still not anywhere near the value of what general PSA is, and now or PSA 10 prices are. And now maybe that's because there's less demand for them compared to gold stars, but then that just goes to the argument of, you know, gold stars are kind of going to be in their own unit for that reason. But of course, once again, we're having the discussion of will the Charizard get to that point because of how high the demand is. and it's really hard to say because like Ava was saying, and she brings up, I mean, she brings up the exact same points I would make, which is how's the market going to be? How's Pokemon as a whole and as a hobby going to be? Are we going to see more of it being cracked open because it's not exorbitantly expensive to keep opening Hidden Fates ETBs? We've seen a massive amount of reprints for this set compared to something like that EX era. So, the question is inevitably, will it be at the same pace? Will it get to those prices? I mean, you could easily make an argument saying that a Charizard GX could eventually get to the price of like $5,000, $6,000. But I think in the time range in which you're looking for it, if you're saying old cards haven't even hit that price point that are 5-10 years older, and sure, you're once again going back to maybe there's less demand there, I think you're looking at least another 10 years or at least a next explosive market cycle before you see the Charizard break even above 3K, let alone 5. So,
I think one other thing to keep in mind is that one is like fairly easily substitutable. Like, I think that the shiny Charizard V would fill a similar gap in like most people's hearts. Like, if you're not going for master sets, I think there are a lot of people who would be willing to just get the Charizard V, which is slightly cheaper. And personally, I think that one actually looks better. But there are so many, Charizard chase cards coming out now that they don't have that same kind of charm that something like Gold Stars do, because they aren't making more stuff like Gold Stars right now.
Yeah, no, 100%. One thing I did see someone make a comment about, and I wanted to bring this up, is look at the Burning Shadows GX Rainbow. That boy will appreciate in value for sure over the next 3 years. It says because, and Purple says, this is B Purple, he says because people don't care about the 1,000 cards. One thing I wanted to make in regards to that is the Charizard for GX Burning Shadows. There's a couple things to understand. One, the set was printed absolutely horribly during the time of both Wave 1 and Wave 2 for Burning Shadows. And so the actual amount that were in good condition were really low. So if you look at the population for the Charizard during that time, it's sitting at around 700 to 800 in a PSA 10 condition. When you tell me that Hidden Fates was printed a lot better, and once again, you look at the ratio of 10s to 9s for PSA Hidden Fates has more 10s than it does 9s, and that should tell you how easy it is. Versus you look at something like the Charizard GX Secret Rare Shiny, it has more 10s than it does 9s by almost like threefold. And so that or more 9s than 10s, almost threefold. So it's like, it was just a harder one to grade, and so for that reason, that's why it's going for around that $2,500 3K price point. But when you're telling me that you have a shiny GX Charizard, which yes, of course, is extremely high demand, but the overall PSA population report of it is about 5 or 6x to that of what is. That's something you have to factor in because the supply is so much lower. Because although I agree with you, like long term, it'll do well regardless of the PSA population because, of course, over time, demand is going to scale out. The rate in which it's going to get there, however, is going to be a lot slower than a set or a card such as the Charizard GX Shining. I think another perfect example when also making a counter argument to that is if you go take a look at a set like XY Evolution's Charizard, right? You've got the XY Evolution, it's just the standard Mega. It's going for around that $200, $300 price point for the overall Mega. But then when you take a look at the standard holographic version, the standard holographic one is going for, I think, several $1,000s as well. And the reason for that is because it's around 381 in a PSA 10 and 13,000 in a PSA 9. So the value that you're getting from that card alone because of the PSA population report compared for the 10 versus the 9, it just once again just goes back to the point of where, yes, this card is sitting at almost $2,000. Yes, it's been overprinted, but 381 in a 10 compared to 13,000 in a 9, it's just a hard card to pull in a 10 because of the printing on it. I don't know if you have any thoughts on something that I just said.
No, I agree. It definitely reminds me of the Charizard from Evolutions as well, which is also notoriously difficult to grade as a 10. And I think one other thing to keep in mind is that, like, the supply of this probably isn't going to continue to increase that much of these cards available. I mean, because it's hard to justify opening Darkness Ablaze, or not Darkness Ablaze, Burning Shadows,
Yeah.
because there's not that much in it to open aside from the Charizard. Whereas Hidden Fates, for example, there are so many cards to open it for. But like when we have just like this mediocre set that has this one chase card that's also hard to pull, people aren't going to be opening it that much. And like again, like you were saying, it's so hard to pull the 10. So there is like the potential there for getting incredibly lucky. But the thing is, even if you manage to pull the card, which is rare and expensive, like the amount of money you'd have to spend statistically on average to pull one is very, very high. The odds of you then getting it are like what? It would like what would that be? Like a 3% chance or something?
Yeah,
It's
very
just
low.
like not gonna happen. So you'd have to like pull, if you pulled 100 of them, you'd probably average like three of them being tens.
Yeah, yeah, it's a completely it's just you can't compare apples to oranges, I feel like, with these Charizards, because when you're telling me once again evolutions, 380 for a 10 versus 3,800, you're literally talking about a 10 to 1 ratio on the overall PSA population. And sure, like I said before, people don't care as much about population, but you can't not factor in supply. And once again, going through and talking about opening up these cards, and like Ava was saying, how expensive it is and your percentage odds of pulling it, let alone getting it graded. It's just good luck on that. It's just not affordable. So this is going to actually be the last question because we're already past our time. But I think this is a good one to end on. D. Smith says, do you think the size of sets nowadays affects card prices long term? Chases will always be chases. I'm more on the chases are always be chases, is what he's saying. So he said, do you think sizes are going to affect it, or do you think chases are going to overrule that?
I mean, it's hard to say. I think it's difficult to like say that it also depends on pull rates, right? So if there are, for example, like 30 secret rares versus three secret rares in a set, but like the pull rate on secret rares is the same, I would expect that those individual cards, the ones that are standouts, like the chase cards, could potentially cost more because to actually pull those, you have to open more packs, right? So like the Rainbow Pikachu, I think is like a 1 in 1,000 card or something like that, is what I've heard. So that's very hard to pull. But the odds of you pulling a rainbow rare aren't that low. So it's really like, I think on average, there are going to be ones that are definitely not that expensive because they're also just printing so many more cards that are like chase cards in terms of rarity, but just not that desirable. So the ones that are really desirable could potentially end up being more expensive. And I think that's why we're seeing certain things being so expensive now. And of course, for the fact that Pokemon is doing really, really well right now. But I think that part of why some main set cards have gotten so expensive is that to get these individual cards, even if pull rates are good, those individual cards are still very hard to get.
Yeah, no, I mean that's exactly what I would say. I think the only area in which you're going to see, in where you're going to see a difference is in PSA, because a perfect example, and we talked about this on I forgot which video it was, like 3 or 4 videos ago, where I was talking about Hidden Fates, and the fact of the matter that you can go buy PSA 9 Hidden Fates for cheaper than some of the raws for the full art shinies, which is absolutely ridiculous to me. Um, just goes to show you that in regards to the PSA population report, there's so many nines, and the value that they're going to have nowadays compared to back then because of the population is going to be so much less. But then of course, when you talk about the initial pull rates for those cards, and let's take a different set outside of Hidden Faith, let's say like an Evolving Skies set, right, where the pull rates for these cards are extremely, extremely low, and the cards themselves are valued extremely high because of the demand for them and because of the pull rates. you're seeing in raw specifically, you're still seeing that argument, like you're saying a chase is still going to be a chase. Like the Umbreon is pushing, 400. I think it's like 350 or something crazy like that, for a modern card, which is dumb. Like it's dumb that it's that much. Of course, you say the same thing with the Shining Fates Hidden Fates Charizard, which is sitting at like 450, 500, and that set's been printed into the ground. But once again, you go look at the nines for either the Charizard, or you go look at the nines for the Umbreon. You're going to be able to pick up the nines for around the same price, if not cheaper, than you are something like a 10 for the Charizard or the Umbreon. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
No, I mean, I agree 100%. I feel like you summed it up pretty well there. Like it can vary once you get to PSA. But yeah, no, some of these card prices, they're dumb. And I think, we'll probably see a lot of them cooling off because it's like, I don't know, there's so many things people can like be excited about that are like ultra modern at once, I feel like.
Yeah, no, 100% for sure. But one last thing I want to say, shout out to Derek. Thank you so much, as always, Derek, for the $2 donation. He says, by order of the Peaky Blinders. That's a little inside joke. I don't know if you've ever heard the show Peaky Blinders, but we talk about it quite a bit.
Indeed.
So we're both huge fans of it, but shout out to him. But as far as it goes, do you have any more points or any things you want to say before we kind of wrap it up?
I don't know if I have any more points, but thank you so much for having me on, and thank you to all of you guys for watching. It's still crazy to me that people are willing to watch like us talk about Pokemon cards. It's a strange world that we live in, but one I'm glad to be in.
Yeah, no, and then of course, thank you once again so much, Ava, for coming on. As always, make sure that you guys go give her a follow. I'll make sure to drop the link down in the description below for the video so that you guys can go follow and check out her channel as well. And as always, make sure to leave a like, comment down below, and be subscribed if you want to enter into our weekly giveaways. But as far as it goes, I think that's all I have for today's video. Thank you guys all so much for watching. But until then,